Hello and welcome. Are you buying goods on Ex Works terms? If so, when do you avail input tax credit? Especially when you buy from other states. That is, when you receive goods at your business premises or when you collect them from the supplier. Now, this is a critical question because not just buyers, even GST officers are confused about this. So, to put an end to this confusion, CBIC on 31st December 2024 has come up with yet another circular throwing some light on this topic. So, in today's video, let's try and find answer to the question whether to avail ITC when you actually receive goods at your factory or when you collect them from the supplier, all in case of Ex Works contracts. Now, the straight answer to this question, as you would have already observed from the title of this video, is that you can avail ITC even before you receive goods, and that's what this circular is about. But what is the basis of this answer? What is the impact of this circular on your working capital? What are the conditions you need to satisfy to avail ITC? What's an Ex Works or FOR supply? To understand all these and more, let's do a deep dive into this circular and also learn about availing ITC on your Ex Works purchases. Before we jump into the circular, let's first talk about input tax credit, ITC. You can avail ITC on goods or services that you buy for the purpose of your business. This we all know. Plus, you have to satisfy 5 key conditions. 1. You should have tax invoice. 2. This particular transaction should appear in your GSTR 2B, that is your ITC statement. 3. You should have received goods or services. 4. Your supplier should have paid GST. 5. As a buyer, you should be regularly filing your GST returns. Of course, availing ITC is also subject to certain other restrictions, but these are the 5 key conditions. And the topic of interest for today's video is the third condition, that is, you can avail ITC only after you have received goods or services. But what if you ask your transporter to collect and deliver goods to you? This usually happens in Ex Works contracts. In such a scenario, when can you avail input tax credit? Now, before we talk about when you can avail ITC, let's first understand what an Ex Works contract is. In an Ex Works contract, the supplier, say from factory or warehouse, hands over the goods to the buyer or any person authorized by the buyer, say transporter. The transporter then brings goods to the buyer's premises. Let's also talk about another Incoterm, freight on road, FOR. In FOR contracts, supplier delivers goods to the buyer's premises. For this, the supplier can either include transportation charges in the selling price itself, or this can be charged separately in the tax invoice. Now, the key difference between these two Incoterms lies in the risk or responsibility. To have a better understanding of this, let's consider a scenario. Let's say you are into the business of trading in laptops. You're located in Bangalore. You're partnered with various OEMs like Dell, HP, Lenovo, etc. On 1st November 2024, you place an order with Dell in Chennai for 100 laptops at a basic price of 50K per piece. These laptops are ready and packed on 29/11/2024. If this is an Ex Works contract, then when Dell prepares tax invoice, it would be for 100 laptops at 50K each, 50 lakh plus GST at 18%, total 59 lakh. Now, because this is an Ex Works contract, you have to arrange for transportation plus insurance if you need it from Chennai to Bangalore. Let's say on the same day, that is on 29/11 itself, you hire DHL for transportation and you pay for transportation charges separately to DHL. And DHL delivers this package to you on 2nd December. But if it is an FOR contract, then when Dell prepares invoice, it would be for 50 lakh plus transportation charges, say 1 lakh, plus GST at 18%, total 60.18 lakh. Let's also assume that the goods are dispatched on the same day, that is on 29/11/2024, and it is delivered to you on 2nd December 2024. Now, if you observe, in both the scenarios, date of delivery is the same, that is 2nd December 2024. But there is a key difference between these two. In FOR contracts, the responsibility remains with the supplier till the goods are delivered to the buyer. So, Dell is responsible till the goods reach your factory in Bangalore, that is till 2nd December 2024. But in an Ex Works contract, once the supplier hands over goods to the buyer or the transporter, buyer would be responsible. That is, once Dell hands over the package to DHL on 29/11, it would be your responsibility. This is the key difference between these two scenarios. If this is clear to you, let's now see when you can avail input tax credit. For this, let's continue with our same example, starting with FOR supply. This is pretty simple. Tax invoice is generated by Dell on 29/11 and goods are delivered to you on 2nd December. Though this transaction appears in your November GSTR 2B, you can avail ITC only in your December GSTR 3B because you have received goods in December 2024. So if you are a monthly filer, when you file your November GSTR 3B, because this transaction appears in your GSTR 2B, you can avail ITC in your GSTR 3B in table 4A5 and reverse it in table 4B2. At the time when you file your December GSTR 3B, you can reclaim ITC in table 4D1. And if you are a quarterly filer, you can directly avail ITC in your GSTR 3B for December. If you would like to know more about availing, reversing and reclaiming ITC, I have a separate video on this topic. If you are interested, you may consider watching it. The link is in the top right corner. Let's now come back to the topic and see when you can avail ITC in case of an ex-works contract. Tax invoice is generated by Dell on 29/11 and goods are handed over to DHL on the same date. And DHL has delivered this to you on 2nd December. Now the question is, what is date of receipt? Is it 29/11 or 2/12? So far, what some or most buyers or even GST officers were of the view that date of receipt in case of ex-works contract is the date when the goods are received at buyer's premises. Because of this interpretation, you can avail ITC only in your December GSTR 3B. This is very similar to FOR supplies where you avail, reverse and reclaim ITC. Let's now talk about the change or rather clarification given in the recent circular. Now what this recent circular states is date of receipt in case of ex-works contracts is not the date when the goods are actually received at buyer's factory. Instead, it is the date when goods are handed over to the buyer or transporter. After this clarification, you can avail ITC in your November GSTR 3B itself. This clarification is significant because availing ITC is now advanced by 1 month. So blocking of your working capital is reduced to that extent. Now, if you are wondering how can date of handing over the goods to transporter be treated as date of receipt for the buyer because the buyer has actually not received goods. This is where basis of circular becomes relevant. And this comes from explanation to section 16 subsection 2 clause B of CGST Act. Now what does this explanation state? Date of receipt in case of ex-works contracts is the date of delivery of goods to the buyer or any person authorized by the buyer, that is transporter. Now why is it so? If you may recall, in FOR contracts, supplier is responsible till the goods are delivered to the buyer's premises. So the risk passes on to the buyer only after the delivery. Because of this, buyer can avail ITC only after delivery. But in ex-works contracts, once the supplier hands over the package to the transporter, the risk passes on to the buyer. Because of this, the buyer can avail ITC even before receiving goods at the factory. So the law is very clear and this circular is helping emphasize what's already there. So this is a welcome move. Let's hope after the circular, receiving notices because of confusion related to ex-works contracts would stop. And even if it doesn't stop, just remember the circular so that you can take appropriate action wherever needed. And this was all about availing input tax credit on your ex-works purchases. Hope it was informative. Thank you for watching.